I think that kids have a bad rap. That's the problem. That's also why I wrote this chapter in part, because, you know, you see this too, a lot of Hollywood depictions of children. It's very rare that you see children portrayed nobly in a Hollywood film. You kind of saw it with Harry Potter. I like that, and that's partly why that was so popular. I mean, those kids had some, you know, there were bad kids and there were good kids and there were heroic kids. Like, they were treated pretty, in some sense, realistically, given that it was such a magical, you know, enterprise. But they had some courage and they had some heart and they had some rebelliousness, and so I like that. But the thing that you have to understand about kids is they're unbelievably good company, you know, and so they pay you back for your care of them, and by being ridiculously amusing. They're little clowns, and they're doing crazy little stunts all the time, and they have a sense of humor that kicks in. Like, I have a grandchild now that's 2.5 months old, and that child can already smile and has the beginnings of a sense of humor. And that's, to me, that's a miracle.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
pretty...
it is. And so they're very funny, they're really playful, they really, really like you. And you can have the kind of relationship with them that you set out to have. And so that's very, very interesting. Now, and you can also, like, once I had little kids, I spent a lot more time with them than I did with my friends, say. And the reason for that was that I actually found it more enjoyable to do things with little kids than with the adults. And the reason for that is, like, by the time you're 30, say, you've seen so much of the world that you actually don't see the world anymore. And this is technically true. Like, I'm old, I'm 55. When I walk down the street, there's houses. I don't look at them. I have house icons in my memory, and I just see the house icons. And so the older you get, in some sense, the more what you see of the world is your memory. And that's kind of, it's efficient, but it's sort of dead, you know, and artists help break through that. They show you something as if it's new again, you know, and so that's why Van Gogh's irises, you know, sell for $160 million. It's like, you haven't looked at flowers since you were 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing that's cool about having a little kid is, everywhere you go, because we're so good at putting ourselves in other people's bodies, the kid revitalizes the world, and the kid's like, oh, I mean, that's what a 2-year-old looks like all the time, right? They're just completely awestruck by everything. And you can see that again, and that's really interesting.
Man, I know you know about my love of Star Wars, but I watched Empire Strikes Back with my 5-year-old at the time nephew, and at the moment when Darth Vader told Luke he was his father, I was staring at him, and he loved Star Wars, and I was looking at him, and the way his eyes opened, I was like, wow, like, what that thing, like, that's what it's all about.
Right.
That's what it's all, like, as an adult, how could I, as a 41-year-old, have that experience again? And that's what you're talking about
exactly.
art. And a movie is art.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I took my daughter to see The Mask with Jim Carrey when she was like a little bit young for that. You know? And I held her on my lap during, I think she was probably only about 5, maybe, something like that. But I took her out one night and we went and saw The Mask, and it's pretty intense, you know? And it was like holding a what would you call, a bundle of electrically charged barbed wire for an hour and a half. She was just like that, and like I said, it was perhaps a bit much for her. But
and then had the knife. It was a whole thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But I mean, you forget how much impact the world has. And you know, if you bring little kids around old people, you can really see this, because old people will sit around. Like when we first had my daughter, when she was the first grandchild on my side, we'd take her up to this lake that I go to see my parents at, way the hell up in northern Alberta, and she was like a little fire. You know how people sit around a fire and look at it, they can't look away? It's because we're all the descendants of the first crazy chimpanzee who couldn't keep his goddamn mitts off the fire, you know? And that's what little kids are like. And the older people just watch them non-stop, and it's partly because they're participating in that renewal of the world, you know, which is like, it's like a reintroduction to the unsullied paradise of being, something like that. But it only works if you like your kids. And so there's a disciplinary element that's really important too. And one of the things that modern parents don't understand, and I think this is because of the exceptionally permissive ethos of the 1960s, when we developed this idea that everything that society does to children is bad. And so don't damage your children, like by putting restrictions on them. It's like, that's so wrong that it's almost impossible. It's why people shy away from kids, because they don't understand that you don't have to put up with any unnecessary, unpleasant nonsense from children. It's not necessary.
It's interesting. So you could almost argue that the 60s led to exactly what you're talking about. These kids who then were taught to be afraid of everything, they become a mess. They're the parents of now, and that's probably in part why they're having less children, or at least talking about family and children in a different way.
Well, and there's also less trust in the structure of the family because the divorce rate has proliferated, and it's hard. Like, there's a woman in our department, in the psychology department, who's Ellison. What's Ellison's last name? She's going to hate me if she ever watches this.
If you can't think of it, we'll post it. We'll post it because you're going to get it the second we get on.
I hope that's right. It's probably not. Anyways, she showed that if you interfere with the maternal relationship between rats and their pups, because rat children are called pups, that you can see the detrimental effects of that disruption 3 generations later.
Wow.
Right, yeah. So, you disrupt those early bonds, you disrupt the familial structure, that echoes. It's like an oral tradition in some sense, because being a good mother is not just something that you're taught. It's something that you kind of have in your bones if you were mothered properly. Like, my father was an excellent father, especially when I was a little kid. He really spent a lot of time with me. And I used to love it when he came home. And like, I have a natural affinity for little kids. And I do believe it's in large part, that's why. It's because I just know how to react with them. And I do believe it's because of the way that I was treated when I was a little kid. You disrupt that. It's like, and lots of people don't trust themselves as parents, because they were hurt, or they didn't have good role models, or they don't trust the familial structure. And so, that all makes people afraid.